Hey y'all, it is November, which means it's Adoption Awareness Month. And if your family looks anything like mine, that can kind of be a big deal. We've got National Adoption Day, we've got all sorts of awareness activities going on. Your feed is probably full of different kinds of posts or stories. And in this environment, I think it's really important that we pay very close attention to whose story we really are sharing. Okay, so I think about this incident we had a couple years ago. We were at a family wedding and there was this distant relative that was there, and I don't think I'd ever met her before, but obviously I'm Southern. We were polite, introduced my kids, were kind, some conversation and all that in the days leading up to the wedding. And so we're sitting at the reception and she comes and just kind of plops down next to me and goes, "So, I just heard your kids were adopted through foster care." And I'm like, yeah, almost as if she kind of thought I should have told her, hey, here's their names and their histories, or I don't know. But I said, yeah, they are. Y'all, she goes, "So, tell me about their sexual abuse." And I'm like, what? So first of all, you're making some really big assumptions here. And second of all, what's your name again? No. There's not an option where I tell you any of my kids' backstory because you haven't earned the right to hear it. And we don't just go do that. We don't throw pearls before swine. We don't share those intimate pieces just for the drama of it. Okay? And the thing is that in that moment, there was never a second thought. There was not an option where she was going to get the details she was hoping for. But sometimes on social media or in different awareness activities, it's really easy to maybe kind of cross that line or at least dance with it. And so the rule that I go by, and that I think is a pretty helpful one to think about, is that I only get to tell my story. So I can tell you about my experience being a foster parent or an adoptive parent or a biological parent or special needs parent or all the different kinds of parent. I can tell you about grief and trauma that I've walked through as part of this parenting journey. I can tell you about the ways that I've worked to heal myself as I've walked through that grief and trauma. I don't ever get to tell you my kids' stories. That's theirs to tell. And if I can't tell my story without telling their stories, then I have to figure out a different way, especially when we're going public with stories. Okay? So I have friends that are other adoptive parents that I might go sit down with and say, "Oh my God, girl, this morning was a dumpster fire and trauma showed up big and here's what happened and right? I can tell that to my friend, and especially if I'm telling it to her in a space where my kids aren't going to overhear, and I can get the support I need. I can share stuff in a private group on Facebook that is just for parents, especially if I'm being really careful to guard my kids' identities and their hearts and the parts that aren't really relevant. That's fine. I can get the support I need. And it's really important as a parent on a difficult parenting journey that you get that support. When we're thinking about sharing stories though, especially if those stories have anything to do with trauma, then only the person who owns that story gets to share it. Okay? Even if it would raise lots of money, even if lots of people would be moved to tears, no matter what the effect would be, because the thing is that before my obligation to society or to all the kids out there, my obligation is to the kids I have in my house. If I can't share something without it hurting my kids or potentially hurting my kids, even if that means further down the line, like maybe right now they don't really understand something, but I can understand that, you know what, in a couple years from now, if this popped up, they would not want their friends to know this. Then I don't get to share that. If my kids decide that they want to share, then part of my job as the mama is to help them understand the consequences of that sharing and help them understand the kind of gradual step into owning their stories and deciding what they want to do with those stories that they own, so that they're not gonna have this, you know, in therapy we call it a vulnerability hangover of, oh my God, I shared everything, everybody knows, and I can't take that back. Okay? Because once it's out there, it's out there. I really encourage you as we're going through this month, and there's so much temptation to just share it all and hope that people kind of finally understand what this world looks like for us, and hope that we raise more awareness and get more kids out of foster homes and into forever homes and out of abusive homes and into safe foster homes, all of those things. Because remember, those are good things. But as you share and as you speak out that story, I really encourage you to think about whose story it is you're sharing.